Long before Tibbers was Annie's companion, he was a demon named Tybok. One of two beasts alongside a shadow-made creature, both served Mordecai's faithfully, leaving a trail of scorched earth in their master's wake. However, when LeBlanc betrayed the Iron Revenant, she and her Black Rose cultists imprisoned the two beasts in vials, reducing them to mere droplets. Tybok's essence was later transferred to a mage named Amaline at the Ravenbloom Conservatory, amplifying her magical abilities. Since then, she continually heard Tybok's voice urging her to embrace the flames. One fateful night, Tybok whispered her name, compelling her to listen as he recounted his history, evoking sympathy within Amaline. Later, she married the man Grigori Haster, another mage, and made a home in the Iron Spike Mountains. Amaline became pregnant, and in anticipation of her child's birth, she crafted a stuffed teddy bear. As she applied finishing touches to the toy, Amaline suddenly went into labor and gave birth to the little girl Annie. As a newborn, Annie was given the teddy bear that her mother made. When Annie was a toddler, she and her father fell ill with a fever that was so hot that Amaline couldn't even touch her. Amaline tried using ice water from the river to ease her daughter's fever but became desperate, resorting to using the powers of the demon Tybok to save her. By infusing the demon into Annie's stuffed bear, Annie's illness was magically cured at the cost of Amaline's own life. Grigori woke up the next day to find Annie in her crib, cured of her fever and playing with her stuffed bear, which she now named Tibbers. Amaline, however, was nowhere to be seen. As more people began settling around the Iron Spike Mountains, Grigori fell in love with one of these settlers named Leanna, who had a daughter of her own named Daisy. Grigori soon married Leanna, and the two families joined together, making Leanna Annie's new stepmother. Leanna began to grow disturbed by Annie, often finding her morbid crayon drawings depicting Amaline and Tibbers. Daisy, on the other hand, grew close to Annie as sisters but grew terrified of Tibbers and Annie's fire magic, which often sparked from her short temper. While playing outside, the two chased a fairy around the forest and followed it to a river. Though Annie protested against chasing it across the river, Daisy began skipping on stones to reach the fairy, losing her balance and slipping. As the water started to take Daisy, Annie reached out with her bear and allowed her stepsister to grab on. As Daisy held on, Annie's magical abilities began to flare up as Tibbers glowed with a light fire. Frightened by Annie's magic, Daisy panicked and let go of Tibbers, drowning in the river while Annie watched helplessly. Mourning the death of Daisy, Annie overheard Leanna as she blamed Annie and called her a monster to Grigori's face. Overwhelmed with grief and emotion, Annie ran to her room and sobbed as she slowly lost control of her magic, setting her room on fire. Soon the entire house caught aflame as Grigori ran into his daughter's room and carried her out of the burning house. As the house began to collapse, some rubble from the ceiling began to fall, forcing Grigori to throw Annie to safety as he sacrificed himself to save her, getting crushed to death by the falling rubble. As the whole house was in ashes, Leanna violently expressed her spite towards Annie, vocally blaming her for everything.
Shut up! You took everything.
As Leanna snatched Tibbers away from Annie, she tried to tear the bear apart out of anger, triggering Annie's full rage as she manifested the demonic Tybok by summoning her teddy bear for the first time, viciously tearing Leanna into pieces. Now, completely alone, traumatized, and orphaned, Annie wandered off into the countryside with only her bear Tibbers to keep her company. She wandered the northern parts of Noxus while avoiding the capital city, believing that most city Noxians would be similar to her hated stepmother. Occasionally on her travels, Annie would use her adorable exterior to convince a family to take her in and care for her, which would usually end in a fire and death when anyone tries to separate Annie from her beloved bear Tibbers. Impressed by Annie's resilience against his allure, Tybok chose to become her steadfast companion. Annie learned to focus her magical powers through Tibbers, tapping into the fiery essence within.